Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Autobot Dawson Gaming. Today, it is an absolute honor to be talking to none other than Dan Jolley, an incredible writer behind many great works, which include Transformers fans and channel fans' favorites, Transformers War for Cybertron and Transformers Fall of Cybertron, the acclaimed Cybertronian duo there. So how are you doing today, Dan?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's just start with this because it may be a new concept to a lot of people. What can you actually tell us about the sort of creative process for writing for a video game? How much do they tell you in advance about what they're going for, and how much creative freedom do you actually have?
Well, okay. So there's essentially two different ways that a writer can be involved in a video game. The first way is you're a full-time employee of the game development studio. So you're there from the beginning of the game all the way to launch. You have a hand in the earliest part of crafting the story. You're there for every step of the way. The more common way is the way that I was involved with War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron. The more common way is that the gameplay is developed first.
Okay.
Because if the gameplay doesn't work, then you've got no game. So all of the stuff with the game engine, the architecture, the balancing of the gameplay, the level design, all of that very frequently takes place before a writer is ever involved. So you might have a game that's been in development for 2 years, and they've got 5 really, really slick levels. You might have, and I'm just making these up, you might have the New York sewer system and the inside of a volcano and a moon base and a wrecked 747 in the jungle, and take your pick. Your mom's house or whatever. They get the gameplay worked out, all the mechanics, the weapon system, the in-game economy, every feature of it, and then someone says, we really probably ought to have a story to
Right.
go along with this. And at that point, a freelance game writer gets contacted, and in this case, that was me. So the game writer comes in and not infrequently has to basically come up with a story that ties together all of the elements that have already been put in place.
Wow.
So you're given like this engine, and then you have to like figure out how to bolt a body on um, around it in a way that makes sense. Um, that was kind of what I did on Dying Light, and that was kind of what I was. I was a little bit more involved with Prototype 2,
Both great
but
games.
on Transformers, the first one, War for Cybertron, when they contacted me, the script for the game, the actual writing, was already done. It was 100% done. And they said, you know what, we don't like this. Dan, take all of the existing gameplay and story elements that have been put in there, the various levels, and rewrite all of the dialogue.
Wow.
Uh, so that's what I did. Um, in fact, it was, and this is another element of writing for games that happens more often than not. Every single bit of the writing that I did for both of those games was in Excel spreadsheets. Um,
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
it was, yeah, there were worksheets for like the cutscenes, and then worksheets for the ambient dialogue, or what's known as barks. Like every time somebody needed to convey to the player, oh, there's a rocket attack coming in. So you had like Ironhide or Jazz or someone say, rockets incoming. But and this is the part of an ambient dialogue that every game writer despises. You have to come up with like 20 different ways to say rockets incoming for each character in the game.
Right.
and like game writers just like universally despise having to write barks, but we all know that they're necessary. Because if you don't have a variety in the way that the characters convey information to the player, or it's also used basically to make the game world come to life. Then you get things like in Kingdom Hearts, when you've got that's the power of the Keyblade, and you hear that like 700,000 times. Or like the I think it was actually an error in Skyrim, and Skyrim is like my favorite game of all time. I love it. I'm not hating on it in any way, but the meme was correct. I used to be an adventurer like you until I took an arrow to the knee. You hear that from the guards in every town, and it becomes comical. So the way that you prevent that is you have each character having 20 or 25 or 30 or more ways of saying the same thing. So like that was, in fact, ambient dialogue was all I did on the game Mafia 3. Specifically, there was a faction in there I think it was called the Southern Mafia. And I am from Georgia. I grew up here in Georgia, where I moved away, but now I'm back. So they relied on me to provide the authentic redneck flavor for that.
for a mafia. That's amazing.
And so then you've got somebody like you need to let the player know that the NPC who uses the shotgun has run out of shells, and that is your signal that you have like 2 or 3 seconds where you can pop up and shoot the guy without getting shot yourself. But you need to have 20 or 30 different ways for the guy to say, I'm out of shells. So, you got, I'm out of shells, need some shells, who's got some shells, I'm out, got no more ammo, whatever, that one's terrible. But you get the idea. So that was part of the job on the Transformers games. For the second game, it was not a replace an existing script. Then it was, I got a spreadsheet with the situations that they had mapped out, and huge blank spreadsheets. And then I had to fill in the dialogue. Now, some of that, the game designers had put in and sort of stubbed in what they considered placeholder dialogue, so that they would know, so that I would know what they were going for. And in a few of those instances, the placeholder dialogue that they had put in was good. So I just left it there. But I would say 90% of everything that you hear any of the characters say in both of those games came from me.
That's amazing, man. So the fact that you actually were brought on to fix a pre-existing script that none of us even knew existed for War for Cybertron actually kind of shaped the future for what we got with Fall of Cybertron, because, had you not come along, one, there's a chance that the story could have been so, if the developers themselves didn't like it, it could have been so bad that we didn't ever get a sequel. But even if they would have done a sequel, it probably would have been a whole different story, because the direction of the first one would have been different. So that's really amazing. In a way, I mean, that's a huge part of what made these games so successful. And that actually brings me to this question here. When you were actually brought in for War for Cybertron, did they already have plans at that point for a sequel? Like, did they tell you to leave the ending sort of open, or were you just trying to write a good, one-off revision to that script before, and just kind of hoping there would be a sequel?
I was just trying to write a good one-off revision of the script. That was my first ever job as a freelance video game writer.
Wow.
Before that, I had a steady job. I worked in the content department of an MMO. We called it an MMO FPS. It was called Fallen Earth. Came out from Icarus Studios, and I was one of the writers on that. We had about 20, 25 writers because it was a huge game, and that was my first ever video game job. And while I was there, I was able to make some connections and found out about this game that they needed someone new on. But so yeah, at the time, all I was trying to do was just make a good impression on Activision.
Right, right, because they licensed it.
I wanted High Moon Studios to go back to Activision and say, hey, that Jolley guy, he's all right. And they did. But I wasn't thinking about a sequel at the time at all. I just thought that it was incredibly amazing that I was getting to write the Transformers. Because I was such a huge fan of the cartoon growing up. It was the first cartoon that I could remember that didn't have what I eventually started calling the Orko factor.
Okay.
It seemed like every cartoon that was supposed to be serious and was supposed to be like action and adventure had to have one character that was incredibly stupid and screwed things up for everyone else all the time. I guess you could also call it the Gilligan factor. But I loved Thundercats. Didn't love Snarf.
Right.
I never really loved He-Man, but I watched it. But every time Orko got on screen, I was just gritting my teeth. And Transformers didn't have an Orko. And that was what started my fascination with it. And I just loved everything about it. And eventually even got to write a Transformers versus G.I. Joe series for Devil's Due Production comic books.
Wow, I'm gonna have to check that out.
That was it was fun. That was fun. I got to write a scene where Snake Eyes slid open one of Starscream's eyeballs and shoved a grenade inside and did a backflip off his face.
Dude, that's amazing! Oh my gosh, that sounds so cool.
I'm a huge nerd, huge fanboy, and so I was just thrilled beyond words to be involved with this game.
Well,
I had no idea that there was going to be a sequel. So you can imagine my delight when they called me a year later and was like, "Hey, you want to work on this thing, Fall of Cybertron, this sequel?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And
because the first one was so beloved, I remember all of us as kids in the Transformers community, me and all my friends were huge Transformers fans. It was actually one of the first online experiences we had was War for Cybertron, playing the campaign together and then playing PvP and Escalation, because before that, we didn't really have online gaming, at least not accessibly. And so it was a really cool experience. So the buzz around the sequel was huge because now we had this experience that we loved so much. And, they went hard on the marketing for Fall of Cybertron too. So if we felt the hype, I definitely imagine you did as well. And you actually pretty much just answered one of my next questions, which was going to be, what was it like writing stories with iconic characters like Optimus Prime? Did you feel a sort of sense of responsibility because of the fact that, he's always had this, him specifically, maybe more so than anybody else on the roster, has just such a allure to him that is kind of protected? I mean, how did you overcome the pressure of having to still give him a creative arc that could last the course of several games, but still manage to keep him, that core Optimus Prime that we love?
Well, like the character arc, I wasn't really responsible for that. The overarching events of the games were already decided upon.
Right.
They really brought me in for all of the dialogue. But what I discovered is Hasbro is understandably very protective of the Transformers license, and they had rejected a number of writers who had tried to do this tried to write for the video games because they didn't think the writers had the right voice. And I kind of just stumbled onto the right voice for what they were looking for. And for Optimus Prime especially, the key to it that I discovered and used through both games and some other games beyond that, Optimus Prime is always very polite. That was the key to it.
Right.
Even when he's talking to Megatron, he is unfailingly polite. And especially when he's talking to other Autobots, the respect that he has for all of his fellow soldiers essentially is key to his character. He is polite and respectful, and as long as you get that right, that's the keystone to writing Optimus Prime.
Man, well, you knocked that out of the park because specifically what you're just talking about his camaraderie. One of my favorite parts I recently did a Let's Play of Fall of Cybertron, replaying it again for the first time in a couple years. And the story holds up so well. And one of the things that I loved, there's a really early sequence in level 2 or 3 when you're playing as Optimus and you are sort of your gun sort of is put down and you're actually walking through this Autobot medic bay. And there was so much dialogue there where you could actually walk up to other wounded Autobots or just other characters trying to perform a job, and their reaction to Optimus is they just look up to him so much and respect him so much, but then his reply back is so humble and he's just one of them, and he doesn't elevate himself above at all. So you did a real standout job there, because I think it was just a beautiful exchange right there, and it immersed you in you really felt like you were this is definitely Optimus Prime. This is the same character that we know from the 80s,
So for both of these games, and thank you, that means a lot. I appreciate that. For both of those games, I never met in person anybody involved.
Right.
Every 100% of it was over the phone and over email. So I had lots of conversations with Chuck Yeager and Matt Tiger, I think was his name, and never met them in person. Have still never met them in person. But a couple of years after that, Activision called me back up and said, "Hey, that TV show Transformers Prime?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we're doing a game. Would you like to write the game for that?" And of course, I said yes. That didn't turn out to be quite the same experience because the Japanese developer for that game had already written the script, and so what they needed from me was what's often called naturalization or sometimes localization.
Okay.
Because the script sounded like it, and no disrespect, it just sounded like it was written by non-English speakers. So they needed me to come in and take lines of dialogue that sounded like Bumblebee, score big with rocket weapon. Turn it into things that, lines that sounded like something the Transformers would say. But as part of that, and this is one of the best experiences that I've had with the Transformers IP, I got to go to Los Angeles and be there for several of the voiceover recording sessions.
Oh, man.
So I met all of the cast except Frank Welker.
For Megatron.
He'd done all of his stuff the day before I got there.
So you met Peter and everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got a picture of me standing there next to Peter Cullen.
That's amazing.
Oh, man, and I'm giggling now. I was sitting there in the studio, and the way the studio was set up, they had a few chairs like for people to just sit there and be present, but the actual recording booth was kind of like around a corner. So while I was listening to Peter Cullen read the lines that I had written, essentially, he couldn't see me, which was good because I was grinning like an idiot the entire time.
Well, you wouldn't be able to not. That's amazing.
It was funny. So the whole cast used one recording studio, except Peter Cullen, who preferred to use another recording studio, and I don't know why. I don't know if that was closer to where he lived or what. It was just a different one. So, it was the entire cast one day, and then Peter Cullen the next day, and then I flew home. But when I arrived at the studio Peter Cullen was going to use, I got out of the taxi, and one of the Activision producers had arrived at the same time. So we were walking through the parking lot to get up to the studio. And in the parking lot, there's a Ford and a Nissan and a Honda and whatever, and a Bentley. And the producer goes, "Oh, Peter's here."
Oh, man.
And Peter Cullen is so nice. Such a nice guy. He's just, he's kind of like Optimus himself in that he's incredibly humble. Just this down-to-earth, friendly dude. He's amazing.
That's amazing to hear. He always comes off that way in his interviews for sure, so I'm not surprised to hear that he's genuinely that way in real life. What an amazing story, man. That's awesome. So this, so working on these games definitely got you some memories for sure. I think you've got a real place in the Transformers lore here, and hopefully what this video does is shows the community, just what an impact that dialogue has on the game as well, because it's such an important part. And so I wanted to ask you before I let you go here, just one final question for you. What projects are you working on now? Is there anything you'd like to shout out on here? Stuff you've done recently? Just kind of give you a second if you wanted to, share anything with the fans that you were working on now. It doesn't have to be Transformers related at all, of course. And also, what gaming franchise would you consider to be one that you really want to write for one day?
Oh, okay. So current projects. I am actually lead writer on a project that is sort of game adjacent that I cannot say anything about yet.
Okay, gotcha.
I've been working on it for the last year, and it's looking like it's going to be announced at the San Diego Comic-Con.
Exciting.
But I can't say anything about that yet. What I do when I'm not working on game stuff, though, is I'm also a novelist, and so since I left mainstream comics back around 2007, I've actually written 17 original novels.
Wow.
And the latest one, about a year and a half ago, I was playing Skyrim, and I was inspired to create a character, and so I've begun my first ever fantasy series. It's called the Demon Sleuth Scrolls, and the first book is already out. It's called The Rune Master Homicide.
Oh, yes, I've seen this on your website.
And the second book, which is called The Black Horned Grave, is going to be out in a couple of months now. I'm in the final stages of copy editing it right now. So what I would like to invite everyone to do is sign up for my newsletter. You can do that by going to danjolley.com, that's DANJOLLEY, danjolley.com/subscribe. And that way you can get early news on all of the stuff that I'm doing and cover reveals and convention appearances and all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Absolutely. You guys, I will be putting that link down in the description as well. So please go do that. And everybody, please comment down below thanking Dan for his time today because, what an incredible opportunity we got to speak with you, man. So, again, thank you so much for taking the time. Your work means a lot to the community. And, we hope to be hearing from you again very soon. I'll keep my eyes peeled around Comic-Con time for your name.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.